Hi, welcome to In a Pickle Knitting, a video podcast about knitting and other fiber-related crafts, along with a little book talk about a fiber-related children's literature book. So welcome. Today is Thursday, October 19th, 2017. I'm coming to you from Manassas, Virginia, which is located in the northern part of Virginia. And let's welcome. If you have been here before, thanks for coming back. It's amazing that we have so many subscribers now, so I hope everyone who's a subscriber will tune in again. And if anyone is joining us for the very first time, welcome to you as well. So let's get started with some finished objects. My first finished object I'd like to show you today are my Rhinebeck is Calling socks, and this is a pattern from the Crazy Sock Lady, Kay Litton. And they were knit with an Adelaide Cottage twinkle sock base in the color Autumn in Rhinebeck. And I had originally planned and talked about last time, I think, adding the orange heel and toe. And then halfway down the heel, I realized I forgot to do that, and I really didn't want to rip it out and go back. So I decided I'll just do them all in the same yarn, and that way I also could enter them in the Adelaide along cowl that she's having, which is you have to use only her yarn in your project. And so I thought, well, then I can enter them in that, even though I thought orange would have looked nice and it was a nice match. I'm very happy with the socks. They fit very well. I make a pretty long flap when I'm doing a heel flap and gusset, so I have a whole lot of decreases to do because I find that fits me best. I must have a long heel, or I know I have a high arch, and maybe those two things go together. So these are my Rhinebeck is Calling socks. You'd think I was going to Rhinebeck with all the Rhinebeck named in here, but indeed I'm not. This is the yarn that I did have left over. So this right here's about 7 grams, I think. So this will be nice in my cozy memory blanket. And then I always wind, well, I don't always, when I remember to do it, I wind a smaller skein ball cake and a larger one so that I'll just have enough left over to put in a blanket. And then I have a bigger piece if, you know, there's a project that this would call for. So also I'm pulling from the outside of the cake, so it leaves it pretty tight and nice to store. So that's my first finished object. Very pleased with those, and I'm also adding them to my box of socks cowl and the Grocery Girl sock bash. My second finished object, which was actually what I finished first since last time, is my Doodler Shawl by Stephen West. And I had shown this the last time with, it's essentially 3 parts, and I had the third part I had already started. So here it is finished, and I did a few rows of garter stitch, I think 2, maybe back and forth once or maybe twice, I don't remember now, and then the I-cord bind off at the edge, so that made the border, the brown part matching the cable at the top, a little bit larger. And these scallops get really big. They start off very small, and I love the scallopedness to them, and they get really large by the end. And I only did 3 wedges. He suggested if you ran short of yarn in section A, which is where this section, that you might not have enough to do 4 wedges, and I had run out. And so I think it was a good choice. This is all I had left from section A, which is not even enough to put in my cozy memory blanket, sadly, because I really liked this yarn. It's where I started at. This is what the final would have had to use for final wedge, and I don't think that would have made it because those rows were getting really long. I think over 500 stitches, maybe 600 if you did the 4th wedge. So I don't think this would have been enough, although it's a nice size leftover. And I had quite a bit of the brown. So I could have done a little bit larger section down here at the bottom, but just liked this size. Wanted it just to frame off. Now, not totally happy with it, and that's because of the stripes, because when I ran out, I did the stripes, and while I thought they looked good on other shawls, I don't think they look good on mine. I wish I'd done it through this whole part. I would have had to rip out, but probably should have done it, so I'm just not sure I'm thrilled with the stripe there. And also, I think this pink might have been a little different color. I don't know. That I'm undecided on. Looked like a really good match when it was all the yarn was skeined up and when I caked it, but now I don't know. Maybe it's fine. I kind of have to get used to it, but I'm very happy with it. It feels very nice. It feels very light. It was a clever pattern, and I thoroughly enjoyed knitting it, which is what it's all about anyway for me. My third finished object is the Familiar Shawl from the Shawl Society. So that's shawl number 6 for this year, and that completes the Shawl Society this year. And I did use the recommended yarn, which is the Fiber Company Tundra, which is it's bulky or chunky, I don't remember. I don't do very much with that size yarn, so I'm not sure that I know the difference right off the bat, but I did use it last year. It was same yarn used in her final shawl last year, the Sonder shawl, and I chose a different colorway. So I really liked the pattern. I like the finished object. I had this much yarn left over, and this was Tundra by the Fiber Company, and this is in a color called Silver Wolf. And I ordered it from the Loopy U, and they're a yarn and fabric store out in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and they give excellent service. I don't know of anybody that ships faster, and it just always comes to you as a nice little note, and it's always perfect. So it was wonderful. The yarn is terrific. They sent me all 3 of the same dye lots, so everything perfect. However, and all 3 skeins looked the same, but I caked them up one at a time, and maybe I should have caked all 3, and I might have noticed the final skein is darker than the other 2, and I don't find this out until I'm knitting it in. So I knit about 2 rows in, and I think, oh, it's going to stripe it. It's going to look terrible. So I flipped from pulling from the outside of the skein to the inside. It looked maybe a tiny bit lighter, and did it that way, and they are different colors. So I'm undecided on how I feel about the change. It looks better now that it's off the needles and has been blocked, but it's noticeable. And so anyway, I'll show you. Okay, it has these really easy cables throughout, and it was lovely to read Helen's description of the shawl when she talks about a familiar being a companion, and she was thinking of the owl in Harry Potter, and so these kind of look like feathers, or reminded her, or reminiscent of feathers. So I appreciated that a lot, reading that description. But I'm sure you will see that darker bit slightly above here, like right about here. So it does show, and maybe I'm okay with it. I don't know. I don't know how to fix it, because if I order more yarn, who knows what I'll get. I may get something even darker. I may get the lighter, and that would be great. I could rip this part out, but I'm not confident with those dye lot numbers, and I wasn't expecting that. It's not an indie dyed yarn. It's a big yarn company. I knit with it last year. I didn't alternate skeins at all, and I still think if I had alternated skeins, I'm still going to see stripes, and that wouldn't have pleased me to have that running through the middle of it either. So I just think this is the kind of shawl that looks good because it's the one color. Okay, I hesitated getting this color. Well, I really wanted the white, which is what the sample was done in, just because when you heard about, how she decided what was her inspiration, so to speak, I thought, oh, that would be perfect. But I just thought, oh, gray might be better for me if I'm going to use it, or even anybody else, just for looking dirty. I don't know. Anyway, so those are my 3 finished objects this week. Okay, now for some works in progress. I had talked last time that when I finished my socks, that Rhinebeck is calling socks, that I was going to cast on a pair of socks in pink for the Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. And that was inspired by the Grocery Girl Sock Bash, talking about that would be a way of entering for this particular month. So the yarn I chose is a self-striping yarn from the Freckled Whimsy, or Freckled Whimsy, not the. This is the Serendipity base. The colorway is called Pretty in Pink from the movie 16 Candles, or I don't know. It just says Pretty in Pink and it says 16 Candles. I'm going to be honest, I never saw either movie, but I know their names of movies. So it is a very light fingering weight yarn, 460 yards in the 100 grams. So because of that, I decided that I needed to go down a needle size to get a more dense fabric than if I use my typical size 1 or 1.5. So I went down to a size 0, and then that necessitated me casting on more stitches. I have only cast on 72 stitches 3 times before, and that was when making socks for men. And these are for my cousin, who is not a man. And I'm not far at all. You'll see I just have started the cuff. I just started these last night. So I got that far and decided to call it quits. So I'm going to be doing the solid pink, which was a mini skein that came in this. It's a sock set with a mini skein and then the self-striping yarn. So this is the pink. And then since I'm doing 2 at a time, I did cake it up into 2 little cakes. And then I have a pretty good piece that I didn't cake up at all this time. I just left it on my Swift and then took it off and twisted it back up. So I have essentially a mini skein of this left. And I think they're about 37 grams each, and especially with having the other color for the cuffs and the toes for sure. And I'm going to do Afterthought heels. So at that time, I'll see how much I have left to do the Afterthought heels. And if I don't have enough of the pink, I really like self-striping yarns in an Afterthought heel. So I like the bullseye look of that. So I will be, I can just use this. And there will still be plenty right here to do those, because I think this would do a whole sock for me without any contrasting heels, cuffs, or toes. I don't make a particularly long leg on my sock, so I am keeping these in a special bag to me because it was so hard to get. I've been trying for a really long time to get a little Bobbins bag. It just is so appealing, her stitching and her design and her fabrics, her color choices, everything. I love the little touches of, stamping her name on there. It has a nice light interior, which I like. So I'm keeping these Pretty in Pink socks. I decided this pink bag would be nice to keep those in. So that is my first work in progress, and I really need to get cracking on those. But I'm sure, even though there's only, 13 days left in the month, I'm sure I can finish the socks. I don't have a shawl right now on the go. Other than my little blankets that I keep as filler projects when I don't have other things that I need to get done by a particular time, I only have one other work in progress, and that would be my pair of mittens. And I had shown this before as a half-finished object, and we know its quality is not terrific, but these are the Meerbunden Mittens by Skein Deer Knits. It is part of a sock club, a mitten club. I think she's calling it a club, where you received a total of 5 mitten patterns, and the second one is already out. And of course, since I'm still working on these, I haven't printed that out or thought about colors or anything. I did before. I was just done with the one, and I have sorry, cast on the second one, and I've completed the cuff. The cuff is to here, and then started the body of the sock. This is the back where you're increasing for the thumb gusset, and then this is the front. So I think I've got maybe 6 or 8 rows down into the main part of the mitten. Now, what's happened is I was not happy with the looseness of this. Even though the fit was very good, I don't like the looseness. And then some of my stitches are tight and some are loose, so I didn't like all that. I was knitting them inside out. So you flipped it here and knit off the back. And that's fine. And I did that because I had heard it helps you to keep the floats looser so you don't end up with a too tight mitten. But I wasn't happy with the stitches. I thought they actually looked too loose, and particularly on the sides, which is where I was concerned, and why I flipped it inside out was because of the sides. So this is tighter. The cuff is tighter on this one than the other. Of course, it hasn't been blocked, but it's still tighter because I tried the other one on as I was going. And I'm actually okay with that because I'm liking the way my stitches look. They're not good, they're not perfect, but they are better than the other mittens. So I feel like that's a little progress, which is what I was looking for. But once I had finished the cuff, and I thought, well, I'm going to go up a half needle size. So I did go up. I think these are so hard to read. I think I went up to a 5, and I was using a 4. But if you looked at the millimeters, it was a half size by the millimeters. I don't know. Anyway, I'm now doing a 5, and I do think the stitches, you know, I feel like I can be a little tighter to make a nicer fabric because I've got a bigger needle here. We'll see. They were never going to be perfect because I'm trying to learn color work while making these. So it's okay with me. They're going to be for me anyway. It's okay with me if they're not perfect. As long as I see progress, and I am feeling a little more comfortable, and I'm a little happier with this. So if I wanted to do another one with the same gauge, I might start with this size and then go up for the main part. I don't know. It's something you learn as you go, I guess. I don't have anybody here to show me, so I read and I watch podcasts about how to do it, and then I'm just, you know, trying my best here. So that is my second work in progress, and I think I'm going to just go back and forth between these two projects, and if necessary, if I'm getting to the end of the month and those socks haven't, you know, made it along far enough, then I will just work on the socks till they're done, as long as they're done by the end of the month. No time crunch on this. I just do want to get them done. I want to then start something else. I'm thinking that I will try another color work project that's not mittens before I make the next pair of mittens in the club. I'm going to do a hat, and I've chosen the bobble hat, which was not this year but last year's Shetland Wool Weeks pattern, and I think by Donna Smith. I chose that for two reasons. One, I think a hat would be better for me because you're still going in the round. It's not, you know, something that's huge, but bigger than the mitten where you have short little, you know, 20 stitches or so, and then you're flipping all your needles around. I think for me, I need to get in a groove, and I might better be able to do that with a hat, especially if I can put it on a cord, you know, for most of the hat that I'm not doing magic loop. If I can just do a 16-inch circular, that might be better. And the second reason I thought I'd do that is that Fruity Knitting did a tutorial on that exact hat, and I've watched the entire thing, and she takes you almost stitch by stitch through working this color work. And you know, she is a fantastic color work knitter. She's a fantastic knitter and sewer, everything. She's very, very talented, and I really enjoy the podcast. So I thought that might be good because I would have something specific to this, and I don't know, that just might be easier for me this time. So those, as I said, these are my 2 works in progress. On episode 5, I mentioned that I would be going to the Fall Fiber Festival and Montpelier Sheepdog Trials. It was the 30th annual. It was held October 7th and 8th, and I went down on the 7th, and it was a lovely day. This is a fiber festival that I think is more heavily, well, of course, the sheepdog stuff is going on, and that's a big part of it because they're doing the trials. But it's more heavily spinning and weaving than maybe knitting, although, you know, there was plenty of yarn. But I did notice a little heavier emphasis. This was my first visit there. But I want to show you 2 things that I picked up that were just a little bit different, not totally different, but that I really liked. And the first is this yarn bowl with the monarch butterfly on it. And it's a really thick stoneware. It has a little monarch on the inside and an extra little hole over here if that's the way you like to have your yarn, or through here. I usually do mine through here, but I do like a yarn bowl. And I especially find them helpful if you have 2 and you're doing 2 at a time socks. It's nice to have one for each of your balls of yarn. This was made by, there is a signature on the bottom, but hard to read, and the receipt had nothing on it. So thankfully I had the book for the festival. It's called The Artisan's Hand Pottery. And she did have lots of things besides yarn bowls. There were beautiful large coffee mugs, and just some other pieces like little canister type things. But she's in La Plata, Maryland, and you can, it's called the theartisanshandpottery.com, and she also is in La Plata, Maryland, if I didn't already say that. So yarn bowls and functional pottery. I thought that was a lovely bowl, and I was going to pass it by, but my husband said, oh, you know, get it, because so far I hadn't bought any yarn, so he thought he was going to get off easy. The second thing, and it was at the same stand, is this. Now this looks just a little strange. It is, both ends come off. This end is just a closed end, but this end, though you really have a hard time seeing it, it has a cross cut. It's been cross cut that you slide your knitting needle tips down in there, and you know your knitting would be on here. It keeps it safe. So it's just a different way to keep your yarn safe in a project bag and keep those needles from poking into your project. And they also said then you can open this in and put in some stitch markers, or you know, little things that you might want to carry with you, your tapestry needle, and everything could be in one little spot. So I bought one, and this is made by Needle Angel and Notion Case is what it's called. Needle Angel and Notion Case by Pam Bailey. And she has a Gmail address here, and I will just put it at the bottom of the screen for you. I don't know how she does for ordering, because this was apparently a friend of the pottery artist. So that's something that I picked up at the Fiber Festival. Okay, next I would like to talk about our book talk today with a piece of children's literature. And so far I have focused on fiction, and it's very important with children to also include lots of nonfiction. Most children, and while I won't stereotype, a lot of girls are very interested in nonfiction as well. But if you have a boy who's not interested in fiction literature, go to the nonfiction, because they usually are, and will find lots of things there. And I like to pair fiction and nonfiction. I did a lot of my lessons were having a fiction and nonfiction piece to put the two together. This book is for fairly young children. It can also be used for older children, that because it's just a very simplified, showing the process. This is From Sheep to Sweater, and it's actually a series called Start to Finish. There are lots of books in this series. I'll read you a few. From Egg to Butterfly, Flower to Honey, Foal to Horse, Kernel to Corn, Shoot to Apple, Tadpole to Frog, Cocoa Bean to Chocolate, Grass to Milk, Maple Tree to Syrup, Milk to Ice Cream, Peanut to Peanut Butter, Wheat to Bread, Cotton to T-Shirt, Iron to Car, Oil to Gas, Sheep to Sweater, this one, Tree to Paper, and Wax to Crayon. And I did use this series in the library when I was teaching, and I used them with second grade and put the children into small groups, usually 3 if that would work out. And they would use these books to look at the process of production of whatever the topic of the book was. And then they would put it into they'd have little squares, and they would draw a picture of the process and write a short sentence and then sequence them in order. And it was, sequence is very important in understanding sequence, but it's also an economic principle with production. So this particular book, lovely pictures, and I think that's always an appeal to children. And you see them being sheared, and you'll notice the text here on the side is not overwhelming for second graders. And when you're pairing students, if they're going to be doing this alone, you can always pair, stronger readers with those who need some support. Another thing that you do when you're using nonfiction with students, and your focus is library instruction, is to point out the features of nonfiction text, which would include bold words or different colored words that then are also defined in the glossary. So the book does have a glossary, and any of the words in blue will be found in the glossary. There's a very small index, and so you can do some index work with the students because that's important for nonfiction. But the whole process of going from sheep to sweater. And this was the book that I would model what we were doing with. So I would use my Elmo, which is a projection camera that can be shown up on your smartboard so all the students can see the pages. And I would go through and read this to the students, talking about the features of nonfiction text, and then talking about the process, and then model for them how I would pick out the pieces. So that's something you could do with it, and the other books as well. But this one, it's very nice to have those fiction books that show the process, but to really see it. Kids like to see the real world, and most children are natural scientists, so they really appreciate seeing that depth and putting it in a book at their level. So this is From Sheep to Sweater, and a nonfiction piece for our fiber. And our next segment is our cupcake. Now, I want to talk just quickly here at the beginning of the cupcake section and tell you that I really enjoy sharing the cupcakes, and I have had several people mention that they have enjoyed hearing about them, even though that doesn't really go with knitting at all. But I want to mention that what happens is when I have to bake these cupcakes the night before I'm podcasting, I lose a lot of my knitting and prep time. Sometimes I'm trying to finish something up the night before I'm going to podcast, and I always like to get everything set up on my table here with in order and all the little things. I always forget something, but still I like to have it ready to go so that I can maximize my time the next day when I'm going to podcast. And baking the cupcakes takes that time, and I felt very stressed both times trying to get the cupcakes done and get everything else done, and I found myself running around the house like a crazy person, and up and down the stairs 20 times. And so I'm going to do something, and I hope it's okay with you. It really shouldn't matter to you because you don't get to smell the cupcakes and taste them anyway. So what I'm going to do is take some, I had always taken pictures of my cupcakes because when I did them for school, which I mentioned to you that I did this for about 4 years, making cupcakes every Monday, I always took a picture of the cupcake on Sunday night when I finished baking and posted it on Facebook. We had a little school group, and just to say, cupcakes in the lounge tomorrow morning and what they were. So I have pictures of the ones that I have made, and so I'm going to insert a picture of the cupcake the time that I made it and had picture done for that Facebook posting, I'm going to just add it over here. And I hope that's okay with you. As I said, you know, you don't get to taste them anyway. So, I was sending the extras in with my daughter to work. And if I'm doing it on a Friday, then one time I forgot to take them over to her that morning. So, you know, we end up eating them, and I really don't want to do that. So, this week's cupcake is a maple bacon cupcake, and they're very, very popular cupcakes. We find them at some donut places, maple bacon, and I've seen maple bacon cupcakes on some of the cupcake war shows, things like that. So this was a popular one, and I will say the frosting is very sweet, but because you actually put a couple of half strips of bacon on top, that salty sweet goes well if you like sweets. And I don't make a super sweet cupcake. You can use any yellow cupcake, butter cupcake, whatever kind of cupcake you wanted to put, and then it's the maple frosting that makes it, and the bacon. So my recipe comes from this book. It's a Southern Living big book of cupcakes, and it has the maple bacon cupcake in it. So if you'd like that recipe, I have copied the basics of a recipe. Recipes are not copyrighted in that basic list of ingredients and basic directions. That's not a creative process, and so that doesn't fall under copyright, but giving you the entire part from the book here, including any pictures, whoa, you're done there. And also any of their verbiage, if they talked about, you know, what inspired them, that sort of thing. But it is okay to put the basic list of ingredients and basic directions. So in my show notes at the bottom, I give you the recipe for the frosting. And of course the bacon, you're just going to fry bacon however you do fry your bacon. But I do suggest making it crispy. You don't want it to be floppy on top of a cupcake. That's not, it won't look very good on when you garnish. And any yellow cupcake or butter cupcake. And I use a recipe that's in here, but I have made these, I think, twice or maybe 3 times, and I don't think I used that recipe the other time. So this is a great cupcake book. I made lots of good cupcakes from this book, so I recommend it if you like to make cupcakes. So there you go, cupcakes today. For the next segment, I wanted to talk about socks and a problem that happens with socks sometimes. You often hear different people talk about putting contrast heels and toes into socks, making it easier then to make any repairs later if your sock should develop a hole in the toe area or the heel, that it would be very easy to take it out and replace it. And I wanted to talk, this is the first pair of socks, I think, real socks that I ever made. They're made from an Opal Love Story yarn. The colorway was 7916, and I did these toe up, which I kind of stopped doing. And this is back when I used a size 2 needle, which I don't do anymore unless I had maybe a DK weight yarn. But anyway, I loved these socks. I was so pleased with how they turned out, and they have that little target looking heel on them. So no contrast, as you can see. I used the yarn, and then not on this one, but on this one I developed a hole. And these were made in, let me see, I thought I had that date there. Oh, 2014, in the summer of 2014. And so they had worn, and I thought, okay, then I'm going to take the heel out, and amazingly could not find the leftover yarn other than a piece about 18 inches long. I guess I threw it out. I can't believe I did that. That's not like me for anything. I'm not a thrower. I tend to be more of a pack rat. But when I did try to fix these socks, here, this is the one that doesn't have the holes. Lots of kind of almost felted together pieces, and especially in the heel area. And I actually found it really hard to find where because this is an added heel, an afterthought heel is added, it's just with the same yarn, but not being a different color. I had so much trouble finding where it was. So what I did was I just cut off the tip and kind of went backwards. Well, the yarn was nearly impossible to get out because, again, it kind of felts together. So I think the idea of a contrast, if you think there might be a repair in its future, that's a really good idea. It would be easier to find where that yarn started because of the color change. So because I did not have enough of the same color yarn to make the sock look like it did before, I found a gray that I had, and I did add. It didn't come out really pretty right there. Just trying to pick things up, it was just so hard to see. But I did fix the sock. So I did what, you know, they said you can do with your socks. I can still wear them. I didn't go ahead and do this one just because it was so much work to do the other. And actually, I don't care that one is one way and one's the other. I really don't, because I wear them inside a pair of shoes, and I don't think anybody else can see it, and they're functional. So function over form every time for me. I truly believe in that. But right at that time, I had also just finished knitting these socks, and I really love these socks, and what I loved about them was the color. They actually are, this looks a little more purple than the socks look in real life. They're more blue, and they match my jeans perfectly, so that pleases me so much. And they're just, you know, vanilla sock like I do all of them. But I noticed after wearing them, and I've actually only worn them one time, I noticed when I took them off that you could see the actual places on the bottom of the foot that were going to wear the most, because the yarn was more crushed. And having just fixed these, I thought, well, I just would rather not fix something. So I'm doing an experiment, and that is I had some, and it doesn't match, some reinforcing thread that came in some yarn that I had bought. I actually have quite a few. I don't remember what the brand is. But I'll find out and tell you down here. They give you, anyway, in this brand, they give you a little spool of reinforcing thread that you can knit with, and I've done that a couple of times, but I didn't like the way it actually felt. But what I'm doing is I'm doing a duplicate stitch with this reinforcing thread in the very areas where the yarn was kind of crushed. So I feel like that's the high wear area, and this is in fact where the hole started in the other sock. I don't have any problem with the heel. So putting those reinforced heels, the heel flap reinforced with the slip stitches, I like the look, I like it, I like the fit. But for me, that's not where my socks wear. So if I really wanted to do something useful, I'd do it all over the bottom, because that's where they wear. But this is my experiment. I have no idea if it's going to work or not. We're just going to see. And I think I will be wearing these socks a lot this winter because they're really thick. It's nice thick yarn, and I think they'll be nice and warm, particularly like wearing about the house. So anyway, this is just something I thought I'd put in there as experimental knitting. So now it's time for a fun part, some giveaways and 2 new cows that we're going to start today. So let's start off with the giveaways. Last week on episode 5, my book was The Mitten Tree, and that entry had 47 responses for the mitten tree, and the random number generator chose number 42, which is Knitting for My Boys, is all spelled out there. There's no name listed, but Knitting for My Boys, I would like for you to send me a private message on Ravelry letting me know your name and your mailing address, and I will get the project bag and the book mailed right out to you. And the second thing that was being offered was the 100 subscribers on our Ravelry page, and I know we're over 188, so that is fantastic. So the winner, there were 85 entries for that one, so putting in number 2 through 85, it came up with number 24, and that is Martha at Texas Chick Mom. So if Martha, if you will send me your full name and mailing address, I will get those 2 boxes off to you so that they will arrive in plenty of time for you to open the things up individually. And for that particular price, since you really couldn't see what was inside, I took a picture of everything before it was wrapped up, and after the first of the year, I will post a picture showing what the Texas Chick Mom received for that giveaway. And next, I wanted to start a mitten knit along, so a knit along or mitten knitting craft, whatever. And this was a suggestion from one of our subscribers to do a mitten knit along, and I think that's fabulous. So for that one, let me see what. Okay, that is this. I thought that I would gift to the winner the mitten club that Skein-Deer Knits has that I am participating in, and this project bag. It's a butterfly and purple bag, has a little tassel on the zipper, and inside there is a 2-part pocket, so small section and a larger section pocket with white on the inside and a little handle. So that will be the prize. It'll be patterns, and which I send to you over Ravelry, and this bag. So that's for our mitten along, and there will be a chatter and a finished object thread over in our Ravelry group in a Pickle Knitting. So if you haven't joined yet, please do, and join in some of these knit alongs. And the next one I want to start, and this was not by request, more by me, is a shawl along, because I knit so many shawls. The sock knit along has been very popular, and so that's something I really love to knit, and shawls as well. So I thought, let's put a shawl along out there. Any shawl, crochet, knit, could weave, and just, you know, not for a child, just for an adult. It can be a shawlette, and any weight yarn that you would like to make, and any pattern that you want to make. So no specifications there, just like with the socks. Just, you know, knit and add your entries. And if you do 2 shawls in the time period, I don't know when we're going to end it, but I'd say for shawls, we might want to go 2 months out. And the prize is going to be another butterfly bag. This one, and it has the striped section and a striped handle, and a tassel, and a little butterfly progress keeper. And inside, oops, didn't show you the yarn that's inside. I have 2 skeins of yarn that would make a lovely shawl. They are alpaca, lace weight, suggested that you use size 0 through 2, and these are from Flying Goat Farm, and this is a farm, I think it's in Maryland, and I've met the owner of the farm, and they are dyeing their own yarn. It's from animals on their farm and animals that she's neighbors with. So I think that's where she said the alpaca came from, was a neighbor's farm, or some fleece she got from someplace. I don't know. It's been a long time. But these 2 shades, a light and a darker purple, that's why I wanted to put it in this bag. And she actually has a shawl that is a pattern on Ravelry that she's done an adaptation for so that the yarn fits it, and I will include that pattern as well. And then this bag happens to have a matching little notions pouch, and inside I put some little stitch markers I made. They're just those little rings with a little glass bead on them. So this is all part of the shawl prize. So if you're knitting shawls already, we'll go ahead and take whips, as long as you're, you know, not just about to bind off. And it'll start as of when this podcast goes up, which should probably be tomorrow, Friday. If not, if I can get it edited faster, it'll go up tonight. So that'll be our shawl. And then, of course, I'm going to give away the Sheep to Sweater book, and I'm going to include this bee project bag. This is a very popular quilting fabric by Moda, and I love it. I put 2 little outside pockets on this one, and then it has a little gold bee progress keeper on the zipper, and inside it's a lighter shade with bees, and actually I think this is a different brand fabric. This might not be the Moda. and then a little patch pocket inside. So some outside pockets and inside pockets, and that will come with the sheep to sweater. So look for that entry to be in the Ravelry group. And I think I said the mitten along, the shawl along, the book giveaway this week. Okay, and we did our 2 prize drawings. So I think that might be all for today's shorter podcast. I think, I don't know. I've stopped and started this thing, so who knows. And I want to thank you all for participating. If you haven't subscribed yet and you enjoyed the podcast or saw something that you would like to, that you found interesting, if you would click subscribe, that would be helpful. And the love button if you liked it. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry. I know that not every podcast is for everybody, so I'm sorry, and I hope I didn't waste your time today. But those who enjoyed it, thanks so much. Thanks for watching. I can't tell you how excited I have been to watch the YouTube subscribers go up. It's almost 550, which I think is mind-boggling and very pleasing to me. And remember, the sock knit along is going to end. I think I talked to a couple of people in the thread, and they wanted to go to right about the beginning of November. So whatever podcast I do next, I will do the drawing that morning as I'm getting ready to podcast. So those of you who celebrate Halloween, I probably won't see you before then. So happy Halloween. Hope you enjoy all of your knitting. Bye-bye.